We're gonna talk about comics from Devil's Due. It's something you wondered if Talking Joe would ever do. I guess we'll explain it all to you. Gonna take some time to read the books we've never read. Hey, Stephen, I know looks can be deceiving. It's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the best and longest running dedicated G.I. Joe comics podcast. We're big in Macau, don't you know? If you're new to the show, you can find out all of the details over at the website, which is talkingjoe.co.uk. Now, today we are continuing our look at the Disavowed era from Devil's Due with G.I. Joe issue 33, The Road Less Travelled, from August 2004. Now, without further ado, about to drop some dope beats from their mics, let me introduce my fellow MCs. First up, it's a real American Timberland. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, listeners, and hello, Mark. I am Tim Finn, and I am here to say I will talk about G.I. Joe in an interesting way.
Excellent. Don't do too much defecating on your microphone over there. That would be appreciated. Next up, it's Dr. J. It's Jay Cordray.
Howdy, Joe fans. Mark's got the dope part right, but I don't know about dropping any beats.
Okay, so where are we? Yeah, so we're talking about issue 33 in just a minute. Before we get into that, I thought I'd just mention for the record that in the week of recording the Kickstarter, the After Action Report, G.I. Joe Comic Book Guide, Volume 2, The Devil's Due Era, 2001 to 2008, by Roger Taft and Josh Eggebeen, has gone live. And so there's some good synergy, as we say, over in corporate land between their Kickstarter and what we're talking about at the moment. It's the second of their Kickstarter projects, and giving lots of interesting background, interviews, cover galleries, character guides, all of that sort of stuff for the Devil's Due era.
Do either of you guys have the first volume?
I do.
I do, and I slightly contributed to it.
Oh, okay. So they're good then.
Yeah, it's a nice place to have all in one place, all in your hand, the complete sort of credits and release dates for the comic series, and
cool.
All the small variations from the direct market edition to the newsstand edition to a second print.
Wow, it's got all that.
A third print. Yeah, so all the covers are reproduced quite small, like 9 to a page, with writer, penciler, credits for the issues, inker, colorist, etc., as well as the covers. And,
the nice little sort of thumbnail cover galleries.
Oh, that's very
good.
And then some sort of bonus bits about like Hawk showing up in that one issue of Amazing Spider-Man around Secret Wars, or an interview with so-and-so, or some of the stuff that was published on the side that you sort of forget was Marvel.
Yeah, and I imagine with the sort of the Marvel is a little bit cleaner because, it runs issue 1 up to issue 155 without too much deviation, whereas in the Devil's Due era and then into the IDW era as well, there's a lot more stopping and starting and renumbering and all of these additional specials and things, and keeping track of what came out when, what the best reading order is. It's not necessarily completely straightforward.
Like the Cobra Civil War stuff that IDW did that went across 4 books.
That's going to come later, because this volume is Devil's Due.
This is up to 2008.
I missed I missed the A-Raw one, so I was happy when on the Kickstarter page they gave you an option of ordering both of them. So that's what I did, and I'm anxious to get these.
Good stuff. Hopefully we'll have Roger and Josh on at some point to talk about it as well. So that'll be nice. But yeah, we're talking about issue 33 today. So August 2004, we are traveling back in time for a story from Brandon Jerwa, pencils Tim Seeley, backgrounds Jason Millet, Inks, Cory Hamscher. Colours, Jeremy Roberts. Letters, Dreamer Design. Editor, Mark Powers. Graphic Design, Mike Norton. Production Assistants, Sean Dove. Military Consultation, Andrew Swenson.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Let's look at the covers. We've got a cover A from artist Tommy Castillo and a cover B from Michael Turner in regular foil and sketch variant form.
So Tommy Castillo has also drawn a little bit of Batman over at DC, and as far as I can tell, this is his only G.I. Joe work. This is a painted cover, which is unusual for not just Devil's Due G.I. Joe. We've had that one Dan Brereton cover and 3 Dave Dorman covers on the spinoff, but unusual for all G.I. Joe comics. Not storybooks or coloring books, but I think we can count on one hand or two the painted covers that have been published for G.I. Joe comics. This one has Hawk holding... When I saw the cover initially, I thought it was the Baroness because, sort of in G.I. Joe iconography, if you see a woman with long black hair and she's interacting with a Joe, right? It's not Jinx, right? It's not Scarlet in a wig, but this is actually Hawk's wife. She does not have glasses, so there is a cue that she's not the Baroness. Behind them is a shattered clock, all in yellow. There's sort of red behind and around them, which is sort of flame, but I think just sort of more of this an atmospheric color treatment because they're not lit as if it's by flame. And then there are a handful of sort of green soldier zombies on the bottom third, reaching up at them with clutching hands. And both Hawk and his wife's eyes are closed, and her clothes are a little bit torn. She's got a couple nicks on her legs, and it's quite dramatic. And the signature is, I think, covered by, I'm going to guess, the barcode. But this is one of those, sort of pleasantly unusual and striking covers. The painterly treatment is great. It's a little bit of one of these sort of, it's not half painted, half drawn, but it's 95% painted and 5% drawn because all the characters have black outlines. So it does have a little bit of a traditional pen and ink treatment. If you think of a painter like Dave Dorman or Alex Ross, when one object ends or overlaps with another, there isn't a black outline. So that makes this look a little bit more like, quote, regular comics. It's a striking cover, and it's definitely, I like it a lot. I kind of want there to be a couple of words of copy, like shards of a Joe's broken mind, or, look out, Hawk, your memories are coming to get you. I mean, it doesn't have to be Silver Age and throwbacky, and it does do sort of the work itself without any copy. I certainly don't want any word balloons, but something about the composition, like there's enough negative space next to the 8 and the 7. It's like there could be something. Maybe I want one or two more elements in the art, like another arm reaching in sort of between the 8 and the 7, or to the left of the, I guess it's a 4. And then the other cover is printed on the inside as a sort of full page, title page marquee art for this backup story. And so that image is Michael Turner, colored by Peter Steigerwald, and it's Wraith hunched over, sort of turning back to look at you with a fancy blade sticking out of its fancy wrist gauntlet. And it's illuminated by its left arm technology and its eyes. There's sort of a blue highlight on the bottom. You can see through it to the moon behind it. There's some nighttime clouds, which kind of look like daytime clouds with a filter over them. And it's the whole character standing on the corner of a wall with barbed wire. And I think I made this point in a previous episode when we're talking about Michael Turner covers for that Serpentor arc. Michael Turner draws very exciting images. I feel like he does 40% of the work for his covers, and Peter Steigerwald, his colorist, does 60% of the work. And I feel like Turner gets like 95% of the credit. Like, people think of Michael Turner covers, and part of what they're reacting to is the like gorgeous color and lighting and sense of dimensionality and light sourcing and highlights and shininess and sunsets and reflective water and metallic textures. And you can really see it when you look at Turner's the pencil sketch variants of his covers. And the pencil sketch variant of this cover, it's a good drawing, but Turner's not making any decisions about light source, and he doesn't really make any decisions about line weight because his penciling style is so modern. So a pretty cover, but I prefer cover A.
Yeah, I shot in as a message over the messenger just now as well, a link to a Chris Warner Predator image from Dark Horse, which is not a swipe, but potentially an influence, indirect or not. But the Wraith costume sort of does definitely put you in mind of the Predator with that long wrist blade and the sort of the camouflaging technology and the mask, and I think that pose that on this cover, it sort of with that other Predator image in mind, sort of quite a bit of similarity.
Yeah. Jay.
Yeah, I think they're pretty similar. And like you said, and I really hadn't thought about it until you said it just now, that Wraith, it basically is Predator minus the dreadlocks, and the crab face. You've got the invisibility, the knife things. I like both these covers. Turner's an interesting artist, and I mean, Tim's brought this up before about Steger, the colorist doing a lot of the work. I'm not even going to try because I'll butcher it. And it's true. I mean, I run the Fans of Al Williamson Facebook page, and Williamson's one of my favorite artists because I feel like you can look at his work and it can stand on its own without color, because he does use a lot of shadows and blacks, but not like a Mike Mignola level of black. Not anything more than he needs to, but the shadows are included in that. And that's why I generally prefer to see black and white artwork that, is able to stand on its own. You look at basically what Turner did, and probably that's as much as he did. And then somebody inked it and then colored it.
I don't think anybody inked it.
It just, you don't think so?
No, yeah, it was just
straight.
Steigerwald just darkened the pencils in Photoshop and went to town, which is fine.
Yeah.
That is a different technique.
Yeah. It's good. It's really good. And Steigerwald colors definitely, I mean, he's fantastic, but it's just a different style of artwork than what I like. And like I said, I prefer really for pencil artists and to be more rounded. I'd like I've said online, I'd love to see these books collected all black and white. And that's largely because the colors are so bad. But I just prefer, straight pencils. And especially as coloring technologies progressed and evolved over the years, the original artwork looks the same. Something drawn in 1930, the black and white artwork looks the same then as it, now as it does then, minus some aging. But coloring fades and printing affects it. So yeah, just as an artist, I tend to like the more pure black and white. But that's a completely long-winded, unnecessary tangent. Both of these are good covers. The first one is strange, and when I saw that, I was like, wow, that's a different G.I. Joe cover. But I like it. I think the only thing that I might have done differently, or that I think maybe would have helped it a little, is maybe if Hawk was a little more straight on, more kind of the Crisis on Infinite Earths pose.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
And maybe just make the figures a little bigger to fill out some of that negative space. But yeah, it's an interesting cover. Definitely one that I would, both of these would interest me in the store to pick it up and take a look and see what's going on.
I think part of what I'm reacting to in the negative space, if the painted cover A, if it was just blown up 10%,
yeah.
If the top of the clock were actually cropped at the top edge of the comic book, right? If we just zoomed in 10%,
yeah.
Then I think it would make use of the rectangle of the frame a little better. Part of also why I'm a little less interested in cover B is that for this issue and the two previous issues, cover B is both a cover and also half obstructed, yes, but a full-page marquee pinup halfway through the comic to kick off the backup story. And I feel like if you buy cover B, to some extent you're getting it twice, and then you don't get cover A at all. And that's less value for me. So in this case, I would definitely buy cover A because I'm getting a version of cover B inside. And, if Turner was my favorite artist, I'd, buy cover B. But it's like I'm already getting cover B on the inside. So it's interesting. The last thing I'll say about cover A is that this is maybe the only time in all of G.I. Joe comics history when a supporting character who we've sort of never seen before, like a civilian, like a non-player character, it's like this isn't Sparks or Admiral Ledger or General Flag, but like someone's friend or kid or spouse or neighbor is not only on the cover, but sort of the primary aspect of the cover. Like it's not Lady J who he's holding. And Lady J is in the issue, and that's fine. Like this series is about their, the Joes have come back and they do have families, and certainly Hawk's wife is a part of this issue. But in the sort of rules of, comic book covers, do you want to give this much prime real estate to a character who, yes, is important to this story, but that character is not going to sell the comic, Like, imagine you're standing at the comic book store in 2004, and you're like, oh man, Hawk, I'm sure I'm worried about Hawk's friend.
And it's not even really a great representation of Hawk. Like, I'm not going to look at that cover and immediately know that that's Hawk. Just
it sort of looks like Duke, and it sort of looks like a lot of guys. There's just
it's a guy
enough,
in a big coat. It doesn't really say Hawk to me.
There's just enough of his costume that it's more Hawk than any other Joe. Like it's not Shipwreck, it's not Stalker, but Ice Cream Soldier maybe.
Could be.
In civilian clothes, but
could be Airtight, could be Barbecue. We don't know what those guys look like.
Yeah. What are the cues that say Hawk? Helmet, pistol, this jacket with the fur lining, a different color for the shirt, right? The shirt color is not helping here because that shirt color does say a little bit more Duke than it does Hawk. And if your response is like, Tim, you're nitpicking, fictional listener of the podcast, it's like, yeah, but these are the cues that tell us who these characters are. If Hawk isn't wearing his coat, then who is it?
I was going to say that Jay's examples of people without their helmets, Airtight and Barbecue, aren't necessarily the greatest examples, because when you said that, I instantly pictured them in my mind's eye from their various appearances from the cartoons. And Airtight's kind of got almost Norman Osborn-esque kind of peak to his hairstyle, isn't he? And then sort of Barbecue's got kind of sort of reddy-ish hair, sort of bit kind of ruddy-faced or whatever.
And a red shirt.
Real quick aside, I wish that the classified people would put alternate heads in with like the Barbecue, so we could pull his head off with the helmet and stick the curly head on there from the cartoon. That'd be awesome.
Maybe that's going to be a Python Patrol classified variant coming up with a different head for you to choose.
It'll probably be an Ultimates variant from Super 7.
If you want to pay twice as much, you can get that head.
Right.
And an additional aside, talking again about this cover A cover and the post, and Jay talked about the Crisis on Infinite Earths post, and it brought me in mind actually that over on the Talking Joe Facebook group, I shared a post from S.L. Gallant talking about issue 290, which was drawn originally by Andrew Lee Griffith, and there was this panel of Horror Show in the back of the van sort of cradling Dana, and S.L. Gallant had a go as well at sort of trying to do his take on that specific panel, and he noted that in the script from Larry, it asked for a Pieta-like pose, so it's kind of a callback to this very famous statue.
Isn't the Pieta Mary holding Jesus by Michelangelo?
I would expect so.
Larry says, "Don't look at George Perez. Look at classical artwork."
Well, yeah, it might well be that's what kind of inspired it all to begin with, but who knows? But this cover here sort of puts me much more in mind of that statue than it does of necessarily the crisis on Infinite Earths thus. But let's move on.
That was a
away
beautiful
from
statue.
Let's say one last thing about cover A. Artist Tommy Castillo passed away in 2017 at the young age of 46. So his one G.I. Joe contribution, quite lovely.
Rest in peace.
Let's talk about the comic.
Jay, do you have a plot breakdown for us?
I do indeed. 77 miles northwest of Washington, D.C., Hawk has been shot by Cobra Commander. The time is 4:39 p.m. Hawk wakes up in a hospital bed surrounded by Joes. Duke tells Hawk that Destro was recaptured by the Joe team shortly after being released by the United Nations. Within 24 hours of Destro's capture, the U.S. President authorized a missile attack on Cobra Island that resulted in the deaths of the Baroness, Storm Shadow, and the Crimson Twins, among others. Hawk is then told the Joe team has once again been stripped back to a small group of 12 Joes and that he's been in a coma for 8 months. Hawk returns to the pit to address the Joes but begins hallucinating and passes out. Later, Hawk is at home with his much younger wife, Carol Lee, as they prepare for his retirement party. At the party, Hawk is offered an advisory position by the president, which he promptly declines. At the bar, Hawk sits down between John Wayne and Hunter S. Thompson. The Duke tells Hawk the Joes did a fine job putting a stop to Cobra, while Thompson reminds Hawk once again of the price paid for victory. Later, Luke tells Yoda he has to go in the tree. Yoda says he's not ready for what he might find. After the party, Hawk fights Cobra Commander in Blackwater Prison. Cobra Commander taunts Hawk by telling him Cobra lives. The Commander reminds Hawk that Zartan and Dr. Mindbender are still on the loose. The Commander tells Hawk he's giving up before the job is done. Close enough, is that it, he asks? Hawk tells Cobra Commander he doesn't have any regrets. All I have is the satisfaction of knowing I destroyed you, he says. Hawk grabs Cobra Commander by the shirt collar and pulls him out of the shadows. But when he does so, the face staring back at him is his own. You didn't destroy me, Cobra Commander says. You made me. Hawk wakes up in the bed. Another bad dream. His wife sits down on the bed beside him. She tells him nothing can keep them apart and they were meant to be together forever. Just then the phone rings. Zartan is expected to be in Prague in the morning, and Hawk wants to be there waiting for him. He tells Carol Lee he'll only be gone 2 days. However, as he turns to leave, Carol Lee becomes a terrible rotting corpse. She puts her bony claws around Hawk's throat. Hawk screams. 4:40 p.m., 77 miles northwest of Washington, D.C. As Hawk is loaded onto a chopper, he tells Stalker he can't feel his legs. Later, Duke visits Hawk in the hospital. He's brought something from home. A doctor comes in and tells Hawk there's a bullet lodged in his spinal column. The doctor says until a bullet is removed, Hawk will have no use of his legs. Hawk tells Duke and the doctor to leave. Once he's alone, he opens the folder brought to him by his friend. Inside is an old newspaper clipping with a photo of Carol Lee that reads, "Local woman killed in auto accident," and in much smaller print below the headline, "Bank clerk to wed Army colonel in less than a month." The end.
Thank you, Jay. I think a page might have been missing from my copy of this. There was a little bit of the story that I seem to have missed. Did I detect a little bit of a note of disdain there about the age of Carol Lee compared to Hawk?
At first, yeah, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
That was a cue in the story, and at first I was kind of like, when I'm reading it, I was like, okay, this is either two things. Tim Seeley doesn't know how to draw older women. Because, obviously she's much younger than Hawk, or Hawk just, is Ed O'Neill in Modern Family that's got a much younger, sexier wife. But then, when we find out the hook at the end that she's actually been dead for all these years, and that's what she looked like when he remembers her. So yeah, at first I was like, when I first saw her, hadn't put it together yet. I was like, what? Come on, she's like 20, so yeah, that was the first hint that something's off. But I'm glad that it was, because man, I was reading that first paragraph, or when he wakes up in the bed, and they're like, I had to reread it like 3 times. And they're like, Destro's dead, and Baroness is dead, and the twins are dead. And I'm like, what? And I just kept remembering Brandon saying, everything's going to change. And I'm like, wow, he wasn't shitting.
And like the first season of Game of Thrones, it all happened off panel.
Yeah. But yeah, and it wasn't necessarily disdain or anything. It was just kind of why is she so much younger? But it was a story point, so it worked out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Kudos to both of them.
So I guess looking back to our discussion last time, we had a long discussion about sort of a reaction almost to Tim's assertion that Hawk had died at the end of the issue, and I was like, "Are you sure?" So Tim, how did you react to this issue and kind of the reveal that Hawk wasn't laying dead at the end of the last issue?
Well, on page 2, I thought, wait a minute, that doesn't work. He was definitely shot dead or would die on the operating table soon after or in the medevac chopper. So, and then page 3, where Lady J says, no, we sort of won. And then Hawk says, Cobra is gone? What about the team? And I turn the page and Flint says, we've been moved back to a core unit of 12. And I thought, oh, this is There's No Place Like Springfield, which is the 2 episodes, the 2-parter from 1985 that ends season 1 of G.I. Joe. It's the final 2 episodes to air in 1985, which actually probably means it aired in early 86. But Steve Gerber wrote this 2-parter. He was the story editor. He was the main story editor for season 1. And he wrote only a few episodes, but his fingerprints are all over all of them. And in that 2-parter, at the beginning, Shipwreck and another Joe land on an island on a beach to extract a scientist who's escaped from Cobra. And he plants a formula in Shipwreck's head. Shipwreck's shark, the vehicle, goes underwater and he almost drowns, and he wakes up 5 years later. He's got gray in his beard. He lives in the suburbs. He's married, and he's married to a character that had been in a previous episode of G.I. Joe. Cobra has been defeated, and his wife Mara explains to him, and there's a very quick sort of B-roll like flashback that the Joes beat Cobra, Shipwreck was the hero, and the Joes have disbanded. And so Shipwreck's having this hard time adjusting to civilian life because it all seems like it was just yesterday. Because it was, and the 2-parter is great. It's got some of the animation is not amazing because we're pretty far away from the beginning of the season. So to the extent that I have seen this kind of story before in G.I. Joe, this was, I don't want to say a disappointment or not well done, but familiar. And I think that Jerwa does a lot of good work in this one issue that is in fact shorter than most issues because of the backup story. And then, yeah, the ending is a good gut punch.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of surprised. It feels to me like this is a very different story for G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, does it seem like? I mean, the whole thing is a. Have we ever had an issue where basically the entire thing was a dream?
Yeah, or a dream within a dream. You know, the closest you get to that in in the Larry Hama series is a flashback to Vietnam or someone in the brainwave scanner, which is to say you don't get anything like this in the Real American Hero Larry Hama book. And nothing like this happened in the Josh Blaylock run. And I don't think anything like this happened in the Chuck Dixon, IDW continuity. So not just for the painted cover and for the civilian on the cover and the zombies on the cover, right? We don't see that on G.I. Joe covers. I know much later a zombie action figure. Well, the Toxo Viper. Okay. But, yes, highly unusual. This feels like an issue of, I don't mean this as an insult. This just feels like an issue of a different series, like a Punisher comic where he's remembering his wife and kids, or a Wolverine comic where he's remembering Mariko, or a Batman comic where he's thinking of Talia or his parents. We've seen, like, there's an episode of Batman the Animated Series where he's like living this life as if his parents hadn't been murdered.
What it made me think of was, I think it was issue 9 or it was one of the earlier issues of The Invisibles by Grant Morrison called Dead Man Fall. And it was in the very first story arc, King Mob, who is an anarchist, is rescuing a young boy from an institute. And as he's rescuing him, he's, shooting people because that's what you do. And just in one kind of panel in that first series, there's a guard that says something, just a moment before King Mob shoots him. And then 9 issues later or something, the entire issue is devoted to that guard's, basically that, I don't know whether it's that guard's life flashing before his eyes, or it's just a summary of that guard's life in a sense up until that point. But it's just completely random. There's things that are in that kind of link it to the main story, but only to show that it's, tangentially linked. But it was just such a big departure. And being one of the earlier issues of the series, that was fine because you're like, oh, okay, well, we can get all kinds of different stories then from this. But like I said, it's just different to see this type of story from G.I. Joe. I'm not complaining about it at all. I did like it. I just thought it was a very different kind of story than what we usually see.
Mark?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it was one of my few notes on this one was, feels very different to a typical G.I. Joe story. I was looking for kind of Easter eggs and things like that, and I was wondering whether we'd seen Hawk's wife before, because it does seem a little out of the blue. But I guess it being more unknown gives makes sense with the payoff at the end. I wondered whether it might be the character from G.I. Joe and the Transformers crossover from Marvel, because there's a sort of a romantic link there.
She was blonde.
Yeah, Senator Barbara Larkin. Not the same person, but wondered whether it was. So I looked up and confirmed. It's not.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen anything really of Hawk's personal life. At least not any of the issues that I read.
I don't like that Lady J cries.
Well, it's not the first time Lady J's cried in this series.
Here's this phenomenon again in the Devil's Due G.I. Joe where something is sad.
And the reason she's crying is like not even one of the bigger things that she should be crying about. It's like, Hawk, it's been 8 months. Okay.
Yeah.
I was looking at that and wondering whether which Lady J you were talking about, because there's Lady J at the beginning of the book, which is a dream Lady J crying. And then there's a character at the end of the book, which is Paige Adams, Tim's favorite character, crying.
Right. Yes. Thank you.
She's also crying.
Yeah. So
and looking all
right. Okay.
Very confusingly.
So let's start at the end. Right. So Paige Adams is crying because her commanding officer has been shot and he might die, or he might be permanently injured. But the two guys who look exactly the Stalker and a mirror propped up on the other side of the panel, that is
the Stalker twins,
that's reflecting an image of Stalker on the other side of the panel. Neither of them are crying.
That's really confusing.
Yeah, what's that all about?
I think left is Stalker and right is Dial Tone.
Dial Tone colored to look like Stalker again, but maybe.
There's this thing where colorists are like, they color African Americans very, very lightly, and then if they color a Caucasian person like the slightest bit darker or more red, because I don't know, it's nighttime or the sun is out, like everyone sort of looks the same. It's like, no, on the cartoon or in a Marvel issue, Dial Tone next to Stalker, very different from each other.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Paige Adams is crying, and I guess women are emotional. I guess women are emotional and quickly give into tears when sad things happen to men who they love and respect in the Devil's Due run, both in the real world with Paige Adams, and also in Hawk's hallucination dream fantasy, where at the beginning of the scene and at the end of the scene, but not in the middle of the scene, Lady J is crying. She's crying. It's really, really small and hard to see, but on page 2 of this comic, after the close-up of the watch, which, by the way, I have a problem with, Lady J says, "Is he?" And there are little tears on the side of one of her eyes, and then turn the page, and she's giving him the bad news that he's been out for 8 months, and she's tearing up. And in that same scene, Duke and Flint are not, because men are tough and they don't show their emotions. And I guess you could argue that in military culture, like in combat, like men don't, and they should talk about their feelings and, talk to therapists. So maybe this is a reflection of the time, but it just rings I don't want to say false or hollow, but it reflects poorly. You know, it's like Scarlet is sad every time Snake Eyes 5 and 10 issues earlier needs to go back to the war and can't like be with her and the wolf in their cabin.
You had to mention Scarlet.
This won't do any good because these comics have been printed and they exist, but Devils do. Knock it off. Interestingly, the character who should be crying in this story, Hawk's wife, doesn't.
Does Hawk?
No, because he's a tough guy.
Yeah, John Wayne doesn't cry.
He does have a tear as he's loaded into the helicopter at the very end.
Wimp.
All right. So for the two problems of gender iniquity here, one of them gets counterbalanced, right? But like,
That's fine. We'll let him have it.
He also does a sad face on the last page.
Hey, when have we ever, or will we ever again, get a G.I. Joe comic with John Wayne and Hunter S. Thompson in it?
we should.
John Wayne maybe, but I don't think we're going to see Hunter Thompson again.
I'd like to give some credit to Brandon Jerwa for. I don't think I would have quite figured out who both of those characters were. I would have figured out who one of them was.
Yeah.
But when we did our anniversary episode of this podcast, I guess I'm talking to the newest listeners who haven't caught up. Brandon Jerwa sent in a trivia question. Do I have this right, Mark?
Yep, that's right.
And his trivia question was revealed these two sort of celebrity cameos in that panel where Duke's at the bar.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Hawk is at the bar.
Hawk is at the bar, and on either side is two Dukes: Raoul Duke, the Hunter S. Thompson, and the Duke, John Wayne. And
Right. So
and Brandon's thinking was that maybe in Hawk's dream he's subconsciously thinking about Duke, and maybe that there's two Dukes. That maybe the real Duke isn't Duke.
Could have had the real Duke in there. Have 3 Dukes.
Why not?
How about some speed limit breaking moonshiners who drive 1970s Dodge Charger, Bo Duke and Luke Duke, or their cousins from the season where the two actors wanted too much money, Coy Duke and Vance Duke.
Oh my gosh.
or their cousin Daisy Duke. She could be the waitress. I don't know.
If you put Bo and Luke in here, dude, you can't leave out Daisy.
She's the latest G.I. Joe sniper.
So what else about the issue is working, or is a surprise, or is not working for you two?
I thought it was interesting, some of the sort of the cameos near the beginning of the book, and sort of later, maybe that being a hint that something is a bit off. That we had Storm Shadow in his V2 gear, and actually all of the rest of the Joes were all in their early outfits as well, rather than like the likes of Scarlet is in her classic V1 outfit. And that's, because Hawk is remembering the characters as he best knows them. And then in the canteen later on, we've got a cameo of a couple of more more obscure G.I. Joes. We have the Ice Cream Soldier and also Super Soldier. And I think that might be Super Soldier. Sorry. Super Trooper. Yes, thank you, Tim. Might be Super Trooper's only appearance in a proper G.I. Joe comic outside of Action Force Monthly / European Missions.
Has Ice Cream Soldier appeared somewhere?
I have a feeling that he has cameoed in the background in a couple of places. Maybe his next, maybe not up until this point, but I'm pretty sure he's been in the background in IDW ARA.
All right.
Man, Tim Seeley sure draws a lot of profiles.
Oh.
I think the standard Tim Seeley head and face is good, and there are a lot of facial expressions in this whole issue. and the scene with Cobra Commander in jail, a lot of expressive body language, but like there's so much one point perspective where we're just looking straight on at something, character in front of a doorway, character in a room, a character sitting in bed, a character lying in bed, and someone standing behind them in front of a curtain, a doctor coming in the room. There are so many sort of flat, not exciting, quote, camera angles in this issue. And so the Tim Seeley 1-2 punch for me of not that exciting, of a lot of straight on shots where the background feels a little bit like an afterthought. It's like, okay, I'm going to draw this character and I'm going to figure out the background around them, behind them, as opposed to like, okay, where does the camera need to be sort of for maximum drama and clarity in this panel?
And indeed, the background is credited to a different artist, Jason Millet.
Oh.
Yeah, okay. And then the there's a consistency, right, to all of these heads and faces, but there are so many side profile shots here, and I find the art boring is mean, and I don't want to say boring, because this story, this issue is all sort of talking, and there isn't a fight with guns and vehicles or like sword play. There isn't like someone climbing a ladder and sneaking through an air conditioning duct. This is all like a speech and talking and lying in bed and at the breakfast table. So to some extent, layouts without flair are appropriate here, but I see this less as a choice to reflect the mood of the story and more of a limitation.
Mm-hmm.
Never unclear, but needs a little more flair, because like this is a comic book. Like I'm trying to be entertained, right? Like I'm not reading a script for like a 1-act play. Like I'm reading a G.I. Joe comic, like this needs some oomph.
So I had some some I Spies written down, but we've covered them all as we've gone.
I have one little I Spy I just noticed. I think it's either page 13 or 14, where Hawk goes to visit Cobra Commander in jail. Now, again, this is interesting because, like we said, this is all in Hawk's head. And I think Tim said a moment ago, or maybe it was Mark, that in the scene where the Joes all turn into zombies, he's seeing them as he knows them best, as he recruited them, as they were when they first joined the team. So what we're seeing in this dream sequence of Hawk's is the things that Hawk attaches to people in his mind. And there's a photograph of Billy sitting on a table in Cobra Commander's cell beside Cobra Commander. So in Hawk's mind, Hawk always has in his mind that Cobra Commander has a son and is a father.
We could also talk for a moment about how with this prison scene where he's talking to Cobra Commander, and then the reveal after the page turn is that Cobra Commander is Hawk, right? They have the same face. But the page before that, when Hawk says, all I have to do is think about you rotting in this hole and I sleep like a baby, he's frowning and smiling evilly.
Yeah, I don't like that face.
And then he says, I hope they show you 1,000 hells before you burn for good. But I'm not sure if the script is sort of encouraging in the depiction that Hawk is the bad guy in that evil smile panel 2 on this page, because I guess he and Cobra Commander are the same, they're opposite sides of a coin, or if Seeley just went a little too far with the frowning smile and he looks like a villain here.
I think that's probably it. Yeah, that panel in particular stuck out as like, that's not. And we've seen Seeley do that with other instances along the same kind of thing, where a character is supposed to be smiling or, looking one way, and it just kind of comes off as not quite what, It's like, yeah, we could see Hawk smiling and being kind of happy about that, but he's, like you said, he's not going to look like a supervillain. That's like a Joker face.
Mark, did I cut you off a minute ago? Were you about to segue?
I was gonna segue into quote of the week if we're done looking at the main bits of the book? Was there anything that jumped out at you?
Quote of the week, 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 quote of the week.
I don't think I had any particular quotes that stuck out at me.
I had a line from Raoul Duke, who says to Hawk, "That American dream they pin to your chest gets a little bit heavier every time, doesn't it?" It struck me as a line with a little bit of gravitas to it.
Yeah. My error detected. Should I do that?
Error detected. Error detected. No prize incoming.
This is a small technical thing on page 2 when we're zooming into the wristwatch, and it says 439 in sort of wiggly digital font. That's part of the lettering layer where it says 439. That's not artwork, that's lettering, and it's colored black, but all of the black on that panel in the art of the outline of the wrist and the outline of the watch is a little bit faded. It's a little bit fuzzy and dark gray. And so this 439 looks like it's floating on top of it. Like it's floating like an inch higher, it's like perfectly in focus, crisp black font. And that as a technical thing, that needs to be fuzzed out a little bit and made gray.
Yeah. They need to needed to make it the same layer as the original art and then apply the same fuzz out effect in Photoshop or whatever it is.
And then my second one is at the reception with the president. And the president also looks like Hawk. His hair is different, but I don't know if that's because, Seeley's just sort of drawing a stock face, or if something in the script, it's like it's supposed to be this celebrity and it sort of looks like Hawk, or it's sort of supposed to be Hawk. But Hawk's wife walks up to him and the president says, "I'd make sure the lovely lady doesn't have an empty glass for long." Her glass is full. And then in the next page, Hawk walks to the bar with a full glass. In the first panel, it's very short. I don't understand. It's like a different glass, but okay. And then at the bar, he asks for another glass of white, but his glass is full, and also there's like brown liquid in it. So I think the continuity of who has what drink, where they are with it, and what kind of drink it is a little off. And if if that seems too nitpicky, it's a detail that everyone could get right. The colorist could get it right, and the artist could get it right, and the scripter could get it right. So not a big deal, but I
we'll blame that one on Hawk's subconscious mind.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
It's a dream state. It's another clue to him. It's another clue that he's having a dream and things aren't making
glasses
sense.
in dreams are always half full.
There's a couple panels that didn't get drawn where he downs the glass and he looks at it and it refills magically and he goes, "What?"
Another one.
And he downs it again and he looks to the left and the right and the bartender is a rotting corpse or something.
And the Duke, John Wayne here is fairly aggressive to Hawk, really, about his drinks order. "That damn sure better be for a woman, soldier."
But Hawk says, "You know it is."
You know it is.
Yeah.
No player's gonna play.
I have this same page where Hawk goes to the bar and the Hunter S. Thompson character and John Wayne are there. This is a good example for me of what I would call ugly gradients.
Oh, yeah.
We see devil's due colors distracting you. I see devil's due colors, light sources don't seem true, so Tim's not afraid to let them know. Devil's due colors are awful, like bad guano.
Ugly gradients, where in Photoshop you can take any color and have the computer interpolate it into another color, right? So if it was something like yellow to orange or like red to pink, that might be for a sunset. If it were like sort of like peach Caucasian to gray, like it is here, I think that in a very general sense just sort of fills the space of these talking head panels where it's like, oh, you know, there's a wall back there. It's metal because I think we're in some kind of actually, you know what?
I don't know where that is.
Well, you can see some architecture in the doorway. I think that, and then the
that
wood
looks
paneling.
like wood.
Yeah, the wood paneling around the mirror in the bar. This is supposed to be sort of an older traditional bar. This isn't like G.I. Joe headquarters commissary.
It's the Overlook Hotel.
So I'm gonna say that's an ugly color for those gradients for those backgrounds. B, it's unnecessary, right? That could just be a single color. And C, whatever the color is, it's the wrong color for this scene. Because, you know, this should be like dark oak, like a dark brown, you know? Because it's like a Washington, D.C. bar. Which means it was built in the 50s or the 20s or something. It's like a little classy anyway. But, you know, I mean, you know,
Devil's Due colors.
It's, you know, it's 2004 and it's not just Devil's Due. It's a lot of publishers and it's a lot of colorists. You know, everything is rendered, even though not everything has to be.
Yeah.
Backgrounds are rendered. Small pieces of equipment are rendered. Like cheekbones are rendered. Clothing is rendered, you know, but like cloth tends not to have a lot of color variation on it. If you just have like army greens, you know, it's not that busy. So anyway, Tim color complaint file number 6. File it. Check off that box.
Yeah. At this point, it's like insert color gripe.
Yeah. If you want, we can just record a stat one and I'll paste it in every episode. That's fine. Okay. So I think
we need a checklist at the beginning before we start talking about it. Flat.
Yeah, I mean,
one angle perspective panels, check. Bad colors, check.
Yeah, we should really have the Devil's Due colors on the sort of the call sheet really now. Okay, we've done the Error Detected. Now let's do the colors.
I will give Tim Seeley and the background person credit for consistency. And even though I'd like more out of the art, I would rather this kind of art every issue for many issues than a drastically different artist every issue, and some that I like more and some that I like less. You know, like the consistency is nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, like we talked about, different artists, you know, having longer runs, and I went through and picked out all the, you know, the Seeley and Jerwa ones, and you know, this is an era. I don't even remember how many there are. There's definitely more than 10 that they did together. So it's nice whenever you get and even somebody like on the original run, you know, you talk about different artists, Rod Wiggum, Ron Wagner. One of the ones that always come to mind for me when I think about the original era having a run was Frank Springer. And I didn't really like Springer's art. So it seemed to me like there was a lot of Frank Springer, but when I look back on him, he only did like 6 issues. And they were kind of spread out. But yeah, whenever you've got one artist that's on a book for a little while, it does create a nice sense of consistency, and it's appreciated by fans.
He's on the Seeley, you know, is an era in itself. Really, he's on the best part of 20 issues in a row.
Yeah, I thought it was a lot.
I sometimes think of something that Carlos Pacheco said in the 90s when he did the Bishop miniseries, that X-Men spin-off miniseries. This was before he took over X-Men all too briefly. I think this was before he took over Excalibur all too briefly. But he did a Starjammers miniseries and a Bishop miniseries. And he said, it's hard because right when you finally figure out sort of how to draw the character or your take on the character, it's issue 4 and the story's over. And that's something that I think we don't give artists enough credit or slack for. That, yes, you know, a comics artist who's a professional should be a professional and they should hit the ground running. But costumes, equipment, locations can be a real challenge. Your first issue, your second issue, and you warm up, and by the end of the issue, you might feel more comfortable. Like, I don't know, if you're drawing Matt Murdock in a Daredevil comic, he's going to have a certain body language when he's, I don't know, in a courthouse. Or if you're, drawing a Superman comic and you've been drawing a lot of Batman comics, all of a sudden you've got these daytime scenes, and like the Daily Planet scenes are very different than, Bruce Wayne talking with Alfred in the Batcave, and Bruce Wayne's still wearing his costume, and he's like, "I won't eat, Alfred. I need to solve this crime." And so,
I think I've read that issue.
And then you add the fact that this is a team book, G.I. Joe, and it flips back the other way, because some people who have been hired to draw the comic after the first 10 years grew up as fans of the comic, and there is a familiarity. But, the rubber hits the road and you're actually drawing 22 pages of continuity. So I do appreciate, though I see weaknesses in Seeley, there is a handsomeness to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone looks good. He's not drawing ugly. He's not drawing inconsistently. Mm-hmm. I want more flair.
I think I've said something similar before, which is that the consistency and that long run, I think, elevates it beyond just the impact of the art of a single issue. Shall we give this a Yo-Jo score?
Yeah.
Yep.
Open that can of Yo-Jo Cola.
Yo-Jo Cola, not grape soda.
It's Yo-Joage time.
Who wants to start?
I will. Yeah, just real quick. To recap, I did enjoy it. I thought it was good. They got me with the twist with the hot wife. I thought, what's going on here? So yeah, and it kind of builds. The one thing that like I said, I had to reread the paragraph or two where they're talking about all the Cobras getting killed, and I was like, what? That you can't just kill all those characters off screen, And then when I got to the end of the issue, I was like, oh, okay, so it was all a dream. And then I was like, wait a minute, this is also Devil's Due. Maybe those characters are actually dead because they've gotten their own continuity screwed up. And I was like, no, have faith. Next issue, they'll all be alive. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good twist. There were some rough spots, primarily just with the art and color. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was different than any other Joe comic, and I think that was interesting. That made it better. I think that it was just it was something different. So I'm going 7.
Cool. I think I'll go 7 too. That's 7 also, not 72. That would be my highest score to date, which would be unwarranted.
You love this issue.
I think it's solid. I think there's a lot of Seeley's art here in terms of his depictions of the characters that I think works well. It's a different story, and when someone tries to do something different, I think that's always interesting. But on the converse to that, it doesn't necessarily move the story on a huge amount. It sort of does tread water and spend time in the Hawk headspace rather than progressing the overall G.I. Joe versus Cobra story. So yeah, quite happy with this one overall. 7.
I'm teetering between a 5 and a 6 because there is some good drama in here, but I have experienced this kind of story before. It was all a dream. I actually think the first time I saw it in comics, I think it's 17 or 18 of the original Eastman and Laird Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I think it's Michelangelo's having this like samurai adventure in feudal Japan, and you get to the last page and it's just a story he's writing in his notebook. He's talking.
Is that the one? That's not the one drawn by Michael Zulli, is it?
No, Zully did Soul's Winter, which is a trilogy of issues. That's like 24, 25, 26. This
Beautiful.
I think this is a Michael Talbot issue. I think it's Eastman and
Okay.
Talbot. And at the end, he's like closes his notebook and he's talking to his cat and he says like, "What a cool story, right?" And I thought, "Whoa, it was all just a story." But I was in 6th grade. Bloop bloop bloop. Fact check. Michael Zully's Soul's Winter is a single issue. Issue 31, 24, 25, 26 is a trilogy by Rick Veitch. Bloop bloop bloop. So I'm gonna give this a 5. Not a bad 5 with a frown and a finger wag. But a 5.
I think that this is one last little comment here. This is optimistic, I think, of the publishers to do an issue like this. And I mean that you wouldn't do this in a mini series. This is obviously an issue that is only going to take place in an ongoing series where you think that you've got time to tell a longer story.
Yeah.
So that was
Sure. Yeah. And I think that, Brandon Jerwa's head was there, that he was in this for the long haul.
telling a longer story. Yeah.
And was there to tell the longer story and not rush things. Cool.
Good on Jerwa.
So next time on Talking Joe Disavowed, we will continue our look at the Brandon Jerwa era of G.I. Joe. We will be covering the Wraith backup story that we've been skipping past these last 3 issues. And then we'll move on to the next arc, issues 34 and 35, a story called Bad Moon Rising. Over on the regular show, we're continuing to cover ARA as it comes out, possibly fortnightly at the moment. The latest arc is High Stakes, with returning superstar artist SL Gallant. And we're continuing our run to the milestone at 300 at the end of the year. So you can find Talking Joe at the normal places. Those places are linked to from talkingjoe.co.uk, which is the website. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, contact us, and Patreon. Patreon.com/TalkingJoe, where our backers Richard, Sam, Jay, Bill, Christopher, and Justin are all getting early access to episodes as well as exclusive content. So that's where you can find Talking Joe, but where can people find you, Jay?
Break Room Sketches on Facebook.
And Tim.
Hub Comics in Somerville, Massachusetts, and arealamericanbook.com on the internet.
Tim, what's your stock of G.I. Joe comics from Devil's Due and associated reprints looking like at this point in time?
We don't have the Disavowed paperbacks, but most of them are in print. We could special order them. Maybe a third of the Devil's Due issues, I think, in the dollar bin.
Dollar bin. Wow.
They're not bagged and boarded, so they may not be near mint. They may be very fine. Not because people are rifling through them and destroying them, but because dollar bins get a little rifled through.
Mm. Yeah, I think part of the fun of dollar bin is that they're not bagged and boarded. Excellent. So I think that is us done. But remember,
nobody beats Talking Joe.
A real American podcast
that covers multi-nationalities and regions.
Number 233 in Hong Kong's, was it Apple Podcast most listened to?
Yeah. Please, all those thousands of Hong Kong listeners, reach out, say hello, send us a message. Anyway, later.
Okay, I'm going to make a little chimey noise and do a fact check for you to insert.
Okay.
Okay, ready? Bloop, bloop, bloop. Fact check.